Good morning, Revolution, and welcome to our show this morning, everyone. We are talking about a lot of big issues. We're going to start out talking about the huge protests that are taking place in Iran, followed by the midterm elections that took place last Tuesday. And certain forces in this country are not happy. Some of them are crying, some of them are jumping for joy. We'll see whether or not what our emotional and political attitude will be. Finally, tech layoffs. Some big Silicon Valley corporations seem to be having a very, very difficult time. And then finally, we'll be dealing with our mailbag question. But first, we want to welcome Comrade Habib to our show. Good morning, Habib. He is from the Today Party in Iran, which is uh, Iran's working class revolutionary party. Habib, big struggles in your country after the very sad and tragic death of Masha Amini, um, led in the first place by women. It's continuing now for several weeks. Tell us a little bit about how it started and what the main demands are and how you see it going forward.
Sure. Good morning, everybody, and thanks for approaching us and for inviting me here. Yes, you mentioned it, and before I start, I have to thank Communist Party of United States for issuing a statement to support the struggle of the people of Iran. As you mentioned, this was around. It was on September 13 when Mahsa Amini, a 22-year-old Kurdish girl, actually. Was arrested in Tehran, in the capital city, Tehran, while she was walking with her brother outside a subway station. She was charged with bad hijab, basically inappropriate hijab on the street. Maybe her headscarf was not perfectly covering her hair. Anyways, she was taken in custody of something that is called the Gasht Irshad in Iran, which is sort of guidance patrol. These are the green and white vans actually that run the streets of the country, looking for stuff like that, bad hijabs and similar stuff. Anyway, she was taken in custody 3 years later. 3 days later, she was pronounced dead in a hospital. That actually was the last straw that enraged the people, because this has happened in the past several times, and it happened again. We had some big uprising back in 2018 and 2019, and many strikes and protests in between. I don't go too far back. You may remember Green Movement in 2009. Since
Yes.
then, a lot of protests has happened. So this recent event actually was triggered by the death of Masa Amini. And basically, it looks like it was an eruption of public anger. Yeah. And people think that, that they are feeling that they are put in a box. They can't do anything. They have to follow all the orders of the Islamic Republic of Iran. As you know, that's the official name of the state, Islamic Republic of Iran. So it's a theocratic regime. It's a mixture. It's a fusion of religion and civic state, basically. And unfortunately, religion has the upper hand. So the supreme leader is above and beyond the law, and he can do everything. And all the penal codes and everything else are tainted with religion, Sharia law, basically. So people are saying, they are fed up, and this was the death of Masa Amini was the last straw, as I mentioned. And so what people of Iran are saying now, they pour into the streets, chanting against the moral police or guidance patrol that I mentioned. And then, it flared actually much larger and beyond the issue of hijab and imposed or compulsory dress code. Uh, what the people right now they want is they want their dignity back. They want justice. They want freedom, and that's why they have this beautiful slogan that it says "Woman, Life, Freedom." You know,
Women, life, freedom.
Exactly. Basically what they're saying is that, we want our lives back. We want our dignity back. We want justice. We want life. We want our freedoms. That's what is happening. And again, it developed way beyond the issue of bad hijab and everything else. Now we are almost, it is almost 2 months that the protests are happening. Of course, the state doesn't recognize these as protests. It calls them riots. Unfortunately, around 330 people have been killed, 50
Hmm.
of them children between the ages of 12 to 17, which is very
And we've been
painful.
reading some 15,000 have been arrested.
That is correct. Yes, at least the last time I checked, yes, it was somewhere between 14 to 15,000 people that have been arrested, all across the country, all across. Yeah. Some of them, they started actually sentencing some of them. Unfortunately, there was a few death sentences, as I said, because the supreme leader is the representative of the God on earth. This is a theocratic regime. It's a religious regime, basically. Sometimes I call it Inquisition 2.0. But because he is the supreme leader, representative of the God on the earth, if you say death to Khamenei or down with Khamenei, then you're the enemy of the gods, and the sentence is death. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, that's what has been happening lately.
I see. And have the, I'm sure that, I know that women are leading it, but I would imagine that the breadth of the protests are quite wide now, that workers and students and uh, have joined the protests. Is that the case?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely that's the case. Because as I said, the issue was not anymore only the hijab, only the dress code. There always have been economic hardships in Iran. Of course, the sanctions have made it so much harder. But the neoliberal policies that the state has followed over the past 40 years, I would say, unfortunately, has brought a lot of privatization, restrictions on unions, for example. Uh, all of these have made it very difficult for people actually to get organized. But the hardship is there. So they do what they can. Of course, the students, the youth are more pronounced. You can see them more in the streets. In some areas, no, it's actually the regular people, normal people. They may not be coming to the street as organized unions or organizations, but they are there because they are fed up. They want their life back. They want dignity. They want just a decent life. That's all they are asking. There was a nice thing posted by one of them on the Twitter that said, "You just wanted to prove that you didn't kill Masa Amini by killing 300 more people. You could
Hmm.
have just said, sorry, there was a mistake. We're going to punish the perpetrator. Whoever did that is going to be brought to justice." No, not an inch. They stepped back, unfortunately. But so, yes, briefly to answer the question, yes, there is everybody on the streets now. Nobody knows where this is going to go, unfortunately, because in the past, the, the suppression has been brutal. Even this time has been brutal, but nobody knows. It may die out, but the problems are not going to go away because nothing has been resolved.
And what can we do here in the United States to express our solidarity to the people of Iran and in particular to the Tudeh party?
Yeah, definitely. Again, we thank Communist Party of USA to issue a solidarity statement. That's the best thing you can do. The best thing you can do is just echo what the people of Iran want. Echo the women, life, freedom slogan. There have been actually protests outside Iran, uh, organized by a society of the victims of the Ukraine plane that was shot down by the IRGC, Islamic Republic Revolutionary Guards. This was 3 years ago. They have organized rallies, really nice rallies. We don't want any interference by anybody in any domestic matters of Iran, especially, of course, by the imperialist powers. We just want solidarity. We just want everybody to know what is happening in Iran. Something like this that you're doing right now. This helps a lot. Just great solidarity. If possible, we can always push the government of Iran to release the political prisoners, to stop violence, and demands like that, basically.
Very good. But we'll continue to follow the struggle in Iran very closely. We want to thank you very much for coming. And hopefully, the protests will result in the release of the political prisoners and eventually some reform so that a democratic, secular government can replace the theocracy. I imagine
Great.
that's the main demand of the Today Party.
Absolutely. Yeah, yes. Yeah, we are hoping that all of these struggles of the people of Iran leads to actually the removal of the theocratic regime. Nobody had any problems with the religion per se. Say, okay, you want to be a religion? Okay, we got to deal with the life of the people. You have to,
Yeah.
take care of your own people. If that doesn't happen, then people are not happy. Yes, we would like to get rid of the theocracy in Iran and move toward the national democratic state. Thank
Very
you
good.
again for having me. I really appreciate it. Great job.
Solidarity forever, comrade.
Thank
Take
you very
care.
much.
Solidarity.
Well, we have had a very interesting conversation with our comrade Habib. Uh, Rosanna, you met with some of the comrades from Iran from the Today Party recently in Havana at the International Meeting of Communist and Workers' Parties. And I'm sure everybody was interested in what happened last Tuesday in the general election, our midterms, and where a big red wave was expected to happen, but it turned into a pink trickle. I read a meme this morning. They said, "What happened? A pink trickle is what happens when the red Make America Great cap is put in the laundry with the white Ku Klux Klan robe. Pink, pink trickle is what the result is. But in Los Angeles, Rosanna, the mayoral election is not over, I read this morning. They're still counting votes.
It's they're still counting votes. Karen Bass is now only 12,000 votes below the right wing Caruso. So they're supposed to make another announcement, I believe, today or tomorrow regarding more results. But she's closing in, and we're hopeful now.
Let's see what happens. We were kind of surprised the
So was
other day.
I.
How did that right winger? But they were.
He's self-financed. He's self-financed. He hired canvassers. They even came knocking on our door, and they had text message after text message sending it to voters focused on the Latino community, and also on the last day or so, they his daughter, they sent out a wide text message saying that this is his daughter, and we want you to urge you to vote for my dad, things like that. So he tried every trick in the book, and of course he outspent Karen Bass by I don't know how many millions. So, and he says he's not going to take corporate money. Well, he is corporate money.
Joe, we can't hear you.
I heard them sirens. I first thought for a moment they were coming for Cameron. Welcome, Cameron. Good to see you this morning.
Good morning.
And Scott, good to see you
Morning.
as well. Karen Bass may catch up. We're hopeful in Los Angeles, but in the rest of the country, Scott, it looked like that red wave didn't happen.
Yeah.
What's your instant
So
analysis?
so I'm right on the border. I'm in New York State in the 19th district, which unfortunately elected a Republican, Mark Molinaro, over Josh Riley. But right across the border from me, about 3 minutes away from where I live, in Pennsylvania, I'll tell you what, people are overjoyed. Um, to have John Fetterman in the Senate and um, Josh Shapiro as governor, even though it wasn't a close race at all between Josh Shapiro and Doug Mastriano. But the gubernatorial candidate in Pennsylvania was I mean, he was like on the fringe of Trumpers, I think. Um, so, and the level of excitement in Pennsylvania and the level of turnout was um, in my area different from what I'd seen before. Long lines at polling places, some reports of interference, most electioneering in the polling place, people coming up to voters in line, asking who they're going to vote for, telling them to vote for a Republican. But yeah, Pennsylvania made out well, and nationwide. Just to put this in historic perspective, um, it's normal for the party that controls Congress to lose big in the first term of an incumbent president. It happened under Clinton in '94, right? Uh, when the whole Contract for America thing came out. It happened under Bush, happened under Obama. This is, um, measured against the trend. This is a huge victory based on turnout, as we've been saying.
Based on turnout driven by three basic issues, Rosanna. One, abortion rights, the right to choose. Second, the right to vote, democracy itself. And thirdly, the right to buy gas and other, necessities of life at a decent price, um, and
Yeah.
and and that's what really almost brought that Republican wave to a halt.
Yeah, I think that
Rosanna.
I think it also shows that people are much more alert to some of the deception tactics that the right wing has been using. I think they're no longer just fooled by little cutesy ads. They're looking more into it. They're getting more involved. They understand it's an increase in understanding of the need to vote and the benefits of voting, and what it can bring for working people.
Cameron, we always said that voting, while individuals do it, it's important to understand it as a collective act, as a collective action of a class and of a people. But in New York, uh, some of the elections were quite close, even though the governor won. I know you've been looking at it. The I think you said that there were three seats that were up, and the Republicans won two. Is that the way it went?
Yeah, so basically, New York just went through a very pretty confusing redistricting process. And after the last census, they lost. We used to have 27 districts, now we have 26. But basically, the upshot of it is that Democrats lost, basically lost three seats, and Republicans gained two. Um, so yeah, that's a loss for New York. Also in New Jersey, where I live now, we lost a seat, and that was definitely due to gerrymandering. A lot of the working class areas were cut out of the district. I mean, that had an effect on the result.
How can we account for a situation like what developed in Ohio, which was a blowout, where even in my hometown, which had traditionally voted Democratic for 20, 30, 40 years, the Republicans won in Trumbull County, they won in Mahoning County. The the Congressman Tim Ryan, who was basically a good working class guy, he couldn't even win his own district. Uh, but in other states, let's see, for example, in Michigan, they did quite well. Pennsylvania did quite well. Um, Scott, what do you think the difference is between uh, a Michigan, you know, winning the struggle for democracy, and Ohio, where similar states in many respects, you got blown out the water?
Well, I wonder if in Ohio it didn't have something to do with the particular candidate the Republicans ran, J.D. Vance, who was famous already for his book Hillbilly Elegy, who had developed, completely undeservedly a reputation for being a sort of like voice of the working class. Someone. I mean, he's a finance guy. Um, but I think he's indicative of, a tendency that's developing uh, in the Republican Party. There are forces pushing for, what a lot of people call a populist approach. One that's xenophobic and racist, but also, um, panders to the working class rather than addressing substantial working class issues. And I suspect that was what was in play in Ohio, particularly because of who Vance was. So I'm not sure if that's generalizable um, or I could be entirely wrong. Who knows?
I had a friend on Facebook who made a very interesting statement. Let's do a quick lightning round. I want to see what you guys think about it. He said it was a movement which rejected Beto. He said it was a movement that rejected Abrams. It was a movement that reelected DeSantis. Movements generate power, not votes. The Republicans have known this for years. That's why they win. You don't elect people to lead your movement. You create a movement where the leaders rise up. Cameron, what do you think? True or
Abs-
false?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think that what we're working for basically is it's we're people try to say we're allied with the Democratic Party, but that's false. We're allied with the movement that's fighting for progress, and out of that struggle, you know, we we fight to bring working class people and women and immigrants and people of color and LGBTQ and young people into leadership in the movement and over government, and that's what we need. We need a working class government that legislates in the interest of working people and democracy.
Rosanna, you think my friend is right or wrong? Movement that elected, that defeated Beto?
I unfortunately I agree, that it is a movement, but I think it's a good lesson for all of us that, and I think I've said it before, we have to build that movement, that working class power, because that is what happens. It's the people that make that decision. In this case, they were misguided, but we can turn that around. We can definitely turn it around. We know the formula. We just have to work hard at it.
Scott, was he right or wrong?
I'm gonna disagree. I think the overall principle is valid, but when we think about the Republican Party in particular, in states like Georgia, the defeat of Stacey Abrams is not an expression of popular will. It's an expression of the concentrated use of political and financial power to gerrymander, to restrict voting rights. Yeah, so there's a movement, but it's a minority movement that is has been able to impose itself undemocratically. So I would dissociate myself from any suggestion that you know, uh, the defeat of Stacey Abrams represents, the uh, mass democratic upsurge of the people of Georgia.
Well, not
And same goes
necessarily
for
a,
Texas.
a mass Democratic upsurge, and maybe the Stacey Abrams governor's race is an exception to the rule. But the fact of the matter is that uh, we have had since Obama was elected in 2007, 2008, the emergence of mass movements on the right and on the left, uh, mass movements for democracy and progress. Remember, mass electoral movements. That was what, real change. That was hope, real change. That was the slogan of the Obama movement coming out of the Great Recession, followed by um, the AstroTurf Republican drive that was met on the other side by Occupy. And then came Donald Trump. And after and the emergence of that right-wing fascist tinge, which is developing more and more in an overtly fascist direction, which was met on the other side by uh, Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. And so for the past period, these uh, right and center left Democratic mass movements have been in contention. And the difference, by the way, between what happened in Ohio and what happened in Pennsylvania or Michigan was that Ohio has taken the brunt of the deindustrialization, uh, gutting of the economy and steel and auto, and with it, a tremendous decline in the unionization, a tremendous decline in what we call the organizations of civil society, civil rights, women's movement, environmental, and so on and so forth. And so there was very little on the ground to work with to propel and to organize people to turn out to vote and to give them something to vote for. And so as a result, Ryan ran to the center right, and that was hardly enough to make the a difference. The lesson, I think, for all of us is that we have to continue to focus on the issues. Number one, to continue to put forward good candidates, including communist candidates, you know, independents, and to continue to work with what we call the forces of political independence, that are not directly tied to the structure of the Democratic Party. Really important. And if we do that, we have a chance of building the kind of electoral mass movement that can institute real change. I want to move to our discussion question, our mailbag. We're running a little bit out of time. And the question had to do with co ops. They wanted to know what is the Communist Party's view on the establishment of co ops? Is that the road to socialism, Cameron?
Well, I think we're definitely in support of co-ops. I don't think it's the by itself solves all the political problems or, the question of what to do with the wealth that's already been stolen. Um, but I think definitely we definitely support co-ops, and in a socialist society, I think there's going to be a big, we would there's going to be different forms of collective ownership, from state-owned enterprises where workers have a big say, and also supporting workers to develop, collectively owned businesses that, help them develop their creative, um, involvement in development of the economy.
Thank you. Rosanna, co ops the way forward?
Well, I think, of course, the people will decide how we're gonna take it. But I think, what direction we're gonna go. But I think co-ops might be a way to practice collectivity, which is something that, we weren't ingrained in doing. The capitalist system has always told us, individual, it's about you. And so to be able to kind of practice a little bit of collectivity, it might be a stepping stone towards our ultimate goal. So I'm not against it.
Co-ops,
Um, yeah, we're not against them, and I really appreciate Rosana's point about training and collectivity. I think that's incredibly important. Um, and we support all forms of democracy. Democracy in the workplace, whether that takes the form of a union or a worker-owned co-op or what have you. But the fight for democracy and the fight for socialism is also, it has to be carried out politically. It's not just something that, it's not just a workplace question. It's not just an economic organization question. That was Lenin's big thing. It has to be a political fight as well for state power. So there's nothing. Yeah, co-ops have a role to play on the way to socialism, and certainly within socialism. But it's not the it's not the road to socialism. I don't think.
co-ops is not the way forward. We favor them, good, more the merrier. But the fight for socialism, as everybody has indicated, is the fight for political power of the working class and people, you know? And that is both a class struggle and a democratic or political struggle. And when we get there, I imagine for a time we're going to have different forms of socialist property: state, collective, co ops, you name it. And they will work in unison, maybe sometimes in conflict, you know, and we'll see how it develops. But yes, in principle, we think it's a good idea, so long as you don't substitute it for getting out in the streets and in the factories, Rosanna, and on the campuses, and fighting for the basic needs of our people. That's the
That's right.
main thing. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Once again, our solidarity to the women and people of Iran. Um, the Republicans, I want to say this before we close. Um, we hope that it looks like they're going to win the House. We hope that they don't win the Senate. But if they do, they're going to fight ugly. They are going to fight ugly. That was a political practice that was initiated during the Bush II administration. The architect of it was none other than Dick Cheney, the daddy of Liz Cheney. And they argued that he didn't have a mandate. Remember, Bush won by a very small margin. And they said, you know what, we're in power and we're going to do whatever we need to do. We're going to act like we have a huge majority, and we're going to create the atmosphere of a majority. And we're going to rule and we're going to act like we don't care. And they don't. So get ready for some pitched battles. And the main thing that was missing, that has been missing over the past 2 years, has been the emergence of that mass movement in the streets, in the factories, on the campuses, to fight around the basic issues of our people. And that means healthcare, that means jobs, that means housing, that means against racist police murder, and it also means against that war in Ukraine, for the environment, against gun violence, and so on and so forth. So get ready for some pitched battles, because it's going to be, we're in a fight, y'all. We are in a fight, and the Communist Party and its membership and its friends and its allies, we got to join with others and be in the thick of it. To the extent that we do that, we're going to help guarantee what happens in 2024. And once again, part of that has to be running our own candidates. Thank you very much for listening. Stay strong, stay safe, stay in the fight. We'll see you all next week.
Women, life,
Bye.
freedom, comrades.
Women, life, freedom.